It's a time-honored tradition, and that's oftentimes a time when we get to talk about what's going on in the family. And right now, we know that there is a collective consciousness, a collective kind of awakening around what we've always known very personally, and that is the injustices that we have faced in this country for over 400 years. For over 400 years. So we want to talk about those things from the LGBTQ perspective, and we have the family up in the house today. Some very, very special people, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves from my right.
Hello, my name is Jazz Green. I'm a trans man. I identify as he, him, his, and I'm a youth basketball coach for Legacy Elite Youth Organization in Concord.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eternity Phillips, pronoun she, they, mix, identifying as non-binary, gender non-conforming. I am a yoga educator and self-care coach through my business, Soul Liberation and Wellness.
I'm going to announce the other person who is invisible. Well, actually, she's just tardy for the party. Her name is El Monique. She is an educator, an HIV educator. She's an amazing award-winning spoken word artist. And her pronouns, I actually don't know her pronouns, so I'll let her say that. Mine are he, him, his.
Adrian Watley, once again, I am the VP for Destiny Productions. Our heart and permanent here in Charlotte, North Carolina, identified as he, him, his.
Hello everyone, I am Luana Mayfield. I am a community activist and advocate. I formerly served Charlotte as an elected official. I was the city's first openly LGBT elected official. Today, I also am the host of Unapologetically Black with Luana Mayfield, which is on the Square Media Network, and I identify as she, her.
Hello, my name is Carlos Dwayne. I am a singer, dancer, choreographer. I'm also a former cheerleading coach. Still do some cheerleading coaching on the side. I am identified as he, him, or his.
Thank you so much. So the premise of our conversation today is, as I said, centered around our personal experiences and the trauma that many of us have faced as we endure racial discrimination in this country. And it's not just a notion. There's been data and there's been studies centered around it. I want to note one of the studies, and I'm not sure if we have that graphic up. If we don't, you just indulge me for a minute. This is a study by the National LGBT Health Education Center. It was done this time last year, so it was done in June 2019, and it reads in short that in general, LGBT people experience disproportionate behavioral health struggles such as depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, substance abuse, and suicide, often in response to external and internalized stressors produced by an oppressive environment. Societal stigma related to mental health also makes it difficult for people to access social support or seek mental health services and treatment. Black LGBTQ people not only face these same mental health struggles, but their mental health symptoms may be further exacerbated and at times caused by structural forces such as racism and poverty. So as Black people, their attempts to schedule a mental health visit with a new provider is less likely to be responded to. So that means many times we go to our doctor, you go to your primary care, and the nurse, when she's triaging you, will ask, well, have you been experiencing any depression? Have you had any thoughts of suicide? So if you say yes, or maybe, or hesitate, one would assume when the doctor comes in, the doctor's going to follow up with that, or maybe that nurse will follow up with that. But what happens, according to the study so often, is that link never happens. And it goes on to say further, access to culturally and racially competent mental health care is limited for Black LGBTQ people, especially Black, trans, and non-binary people because of the existing mental health force that is predominantly white American and insufficiently trained to conduct mental health sessions when topics of oppression and privilege are central. Just hearing that, what are just some thoughts? Anybody? Just about that reality in our community.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Has that been your personal experience?
I can't say yes because my personal experience in terms of medical care has, well, I take that back. So, yeah, I had a procedure done by my OBGYN, and because I identified as a lesbian, there was less concern about the impact of the procedure. So it was it was affecting my uterus. And so I said I didn't want kids. I've known that forever. I don't want to birth children. They're not coming out of me. So when I was talking to the doctor about procedure, there was like all this concern because I was relatively young, and you know, there's a lot of issues with women in doctor offices in the first place.
Period. Right.
Right. But then when I said, okay, well, you know, I'm gay. Oh, okay, well, all right, that's fine. I'm like, well, hold on. Like,
So the assumption is because you don't want to have children that you didn't need to be concerned about your reproductive health.
it was more so because I was gay. There was no concern about whether or not I would change my mind about having children.
Wow.
Because even when I said I don't want children, there was still concern.
Wow.
The concern didn't leave until I said I was gay.
Right.
So I'm like, why does that make a difference? I mean, I still went along with it, but like, it shouldn't matter that I'm a lesbian.
Sure.
That you changed your tone in this conversation.
That's right. Anybody else hearing this data? How does it make you feel?
I think it's very valid when I think about how difficult it was to identify and find a black therapist, a black female therapist. That's not even including a black female therapist that hasn't been trained by the whitewashing of therapy and downplaying. So then to add on top of that, being a lesbian in healthy relationship, in healthy mind, but trying to maintain that healthy mind because the blackness overwhelms everything else in today's society. It was very interesting how difficult it was to try to maneuver. And even today, Jaleesa and my wife and I have conversations because I'm mad all the damn time.
That's right.
I am angry I wake up mad because of everything that's going on. So my baby has decided that I need to talk to somebody because I'm to that point where I recognize that we're not having real conversation about black community by black community.
That's right.
We keep letting white America tell our narrative and tell our story, and when we step up to tell our story, white America then wants to change the headline. So knowing that a study was done, that's great. What I would like to know is how many new therapists have been cultivated, have been supported for them to be successful, because we know local therapists right here in Charlotte who've had a hard time, even with their licensing, to get their businesses off the ground because they're not getting the support from the main hospitals and from those that fund other groups when they want to talk about therapy, because you can't tell me my story. I don't care how much you read about it.
That's right.
I don't care how empathetic you are about it. You cannot live my story. That every day before we walk out the house, we got to have a conversation with ourselves, because we never know what we're going to run into, even in our own neighborhood.
Anybody else? Yes, Carlos.
And this is from my personal experience. My job, I was going through some things, and I let them know, you know, I'm having some issues with depression and different things that I was kind of going through, dealing with the death of my father, dealing with things that I go through as a black man in the workplace and my relationship and things like that. And so the first therapist they linked me with was a white older woman. And I'm like, okay. And at first I was totally against it, but I just was like, you know, let me give her a chance. However, I don't think that she, as much, even now, I talked to her 2 weeks ago and she was just saying, how are you feeling in all of this? I would like for you to tell me that you understand how I'm feeling and all this. It shouldn't even be a question. And I think that that's where that gap is between with healthcare and, you know, whether it's mental health, physical health, whatever, that gap is between having people that we can relate to. Because even as far as my PCP, she's a black woman, but she still knows a little more about um, the conditions and the diseases and the things that black people are more prone to than white people, so we can identify a little bit more. Whereas this woman,
Yes.
I'm a gay young black man.
Yes.
She's an older white woman. All she can do is tell me about the things that she reads, all the shit, but she can never walk in my shoes or give me the I say the most accurate form of therapy.
Yes.
Because she can't relate. And I think if we had more people, like she said, step up, and if they were more, if we cultivate those people and they have the support, because they're out there, those LGBT therapists and everything, they're out there, but they don't have the support as much as their white counterparts, their white straight counterparts get, and even the white LGBT counterparts get, when it comes to the support, the finances, and the backing that we need to get those off the ground, because it's necessary.
This is good. So one of the things we definitely want to do with this conversation, I mean, we want to emote and we want to share, but we want some takeaways as well. So if you are watching and you have any ideas or suggestions about how we can better this deficiency in our care, we ask that you please post, and we will share those things online, and we will also take account of those things when we look back at this video as well. I know one thing that Destiny and Charlotte Black Pride can commit to from this conversation is creating a resource list of psychosocial care providers. So that's therapists, that's clinical psychologists that are culturally competent and that are for and about our community. Like, we can definitely generate that list. We can post it on our respective websites, and we can have that up within the next 14 days or so. Because that seems to be the real issue in care. Anybody else had any experience in their psychosocial care that was culturally incompetent?
I could kind of be a poster boy for it. So I've been, I guess, as a kid, a lesbian, because I was born a female, basically my whole life. I've known, but obviously, growing up in a Christian family, it's really hard to be yourself. But things were going great until about maybe when I turned about 22, and I decided that, I was never in the closet, but when I decided to go for, I guess, an OBGYN, an ex-girlfriend said I should get one done because I was a female, so I was like, okay, cool. And I let them know, like she said, hey, I'm a lesbian, so there's not really much we need to talk about. All that just didn't matter. Like, they didn't care about my feelings. Like, they still touched me in places I didn't want to be touched. Like, oh, it's a medical procedure, but I'm like, okay, I understand that, but you can also tell some of these. I know if I have a disease, can't you tell that through blood work? Or if I'm sick, you don't physically have to touch me if I've never been touched, right? Like, you can't get a sexually transmitted disease if you've never had sex before. So, that was discarded. Being a lesbian was not fun at all. Sorry, for me personally. I just did not have the support that I thought I should have had. I didn't have the same, being a black lesbian was really hard because, I went to an all-white college. I graduated from Penn State University. So I had just about all white friends, and it was really tough trying to maintain the same persona or the same, pretend like I had the same educational background, because I didn't. I went to a really poor high school. I went to 3 high schools, actually. Really poor high school. Thought I was ready for college. Went to one of the biggest schools in the country, and I almost bombed it because I was not educationally ready for that school. And that really is when I kind of started getting into the whole, holy crap, like, black people really, we are really up in this world. Like, we don't have the same advantages as other people, and just medically, it was rough when I got sick because I didn't have anybody there to go to. I didn't have anybody to talk to about, what I should do as far as being a lesbian, or what I should do as far as, having issues in places where people who are straight have issues and they can go see their white doctors or even their black doctors, but they're straight doctors. So having doctors that affiliate with us would be awesome. Moving on to the most recent part of my life, when I came out as a trans man, I was married. I'm now no longer married, part of it. Trying to find a doctor took about a year almost. It was that intense. I went through recommendations, and I Googled Yellow Pages. I actually bought a phone, went and got a phone book. Yellow Pages, my work affiliates. It took almost 6 to 7 months just to get in to see a psychologist to get my hysterectomy done. And um, when I saw this psychologist, the first person they referred me to was an older white male. I walked in the room, I gave him a chance, and the third thing out of his mouth, I just knew for a fact. I was like, I can't talk with you. Sorry, I wasted your time. And I gracefully walked out and began again looking for a black psychologist to speak to. And the funny part is when I told my medical, I don't know what they're called, but whoever bills you, I was like, I never actually spoke with that man for more than 5 minutes. I still got billed for it because he saw my face. I thought that was kind of crazy. But trying to just, like everyone was saying, going through the having the resources is really important, because I felt like if I have a friend who's trans and she's white and she didn't have to go through any of that. She found a psychiatrist, her psychologist, and psychiatrist, because they tell you need both, which I found out you don't. I just needed both. And her surgeon and her primary care physician and health plans don't cover our services. And now with some of our president, pretty much killing the discrimination law against it, we're not going to have any more in less than the 5 that we did have. To get our medical bills covered and to find psychiatrists and therapists. And unfortunately, a lot of black, gay therapists, psychologists, and doctors are probably going to be afraid to lose their licenses to speak up for it. And that's unfortunate, and that's where I think the conversation, as far as medically, for the LGBTQ community needs to go. Like, who's going to be that advocate for those doctors, for those nurses, and those psychologists, psychiatrists, who can help people like me, because I've been diagnosed as severely depressed since 2018. And, in my job, I came to them and, with an issue, and they kicked me out of work for 3 months because I was homicidal. I was like, I'm only homicidal because of the medication your white doctor put me on. When I switched doctors, that got taken off. I got put on something great. I began speaking. I got a group around me, people who supported me, and I started feeling awesome. And it's really sad that, I had to go. Like, I'm 31. At the age of 26 is when I 26, 27 is when I started this whole, trans coming out process. And it took 2 years. I didn't see a doctor about my transitioning until 2019.
So Jazz, you were referring to the fact that just this week the Trump administration erased transgender civil rights protections in healthcare that the Obama administration had enacted. So that means that, if you wanted to file a suit for any of the malpractice that you experienced, you can't. And that means that as a trans person, you could go into a provider's office and not get quality care, get discriminatory care, and not have any rights therein. Like, as a young person, you're the youngest person, I believe. Well, actually, you might be the youngest person. But as a young adult on our panel, I get so concerned about what millennials feel and think about their future. Like, do you have optimism? And I want to, give this to Carlos, about your future. Like, when you're seeing black men murdered in the streets, literally a black man jogging in his own neighborhood, shot down in the streets for doing something that I do all the time. You see, I live in Villa Heights over here in Noda, and on every block there's a new house going up. When my partner and I are walking down the street, we walk up and walk through the house and check it out. We might be potential buyers. The thought that I could do that and be shot to death, so as a young person, when you think about your future, are you optimistic? Do you have hope?
Honestly, it's scary. I'm a person of faith. So I try to activate that as much as possible, but realistically, it is scary. And it seems like there is no hope anymore, because you see even the small steps that have been taken. It seems like then we have someone, like Jazz said, that comes in office and then just knocks us right back. And it's like, and how are we supposed to be hopeful for that? And how are we supposed to trust the leaders in the future that they won't do it even more and take away more things or take us back further than where we have come from? So it's scary. Like I remember being a child, and if you said you wanted to be a police officer, it was good. That was a good career goal.
Yes.
Now we're teaching our children to protect themselves from police officers.
Right.
And how are we supposed to be optimistic in that? That's just the black part of it.
Yeah.
Then being gay
Yeah.
or being transgender is a whole new layer that is put on top of that, because then not only do we have to be scared of white people, but then sometimes we have to be scared of black people.
Yes.
Yes.
Because me being gay or people who are transgender, they're not seen on the same level of Black Lives Matter
Sure.
as straight black people.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So how do we feel protected? And I think that's the point where the optimism is lost. Because it's like, okay, who protects us? Right, and we say all black lives matter, and but do they really? Like, and that's the question that I need black people who are chanting that to really ask themselves. So will you fight for me, or will you fight for my sister who's transgender, or my brother who's transgender? Will you fight for us the same way that you fought for someone who was cisgender, who was treated bad, you know, or who was killed, or who was whatever? And I think that's the conversations where those in-house, you know how they say you got to talk about things in-house before you go out of the house.
That's right.
We as a black community need to get our house in order.
Yes.
Sometimes before we can step out and do that, because how does in the same week we were chanting for George Floyd, in the same city we have a video of a transgender woman being beaten
Crazy.
brutally by our community.
Crazy.
In the same, because George Floyd and her were in the same city, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And how could we expect people to take us seriously, as far as white people to take us seriously, when we putting out two videos in the same week of them doing something to us and us doing something to us? So I think that the
And it's
optimism
crazy
is lost.
that people in our community don't see the equivalence. Like, they don't see the equivalence at all. So what is it going to take for us to bridge that gap with our cisgender brethren and sisters? And first of all, I think there's no gap to be bridged, because we really are in it together. You know, I don't think, you know, George Floyd could have been LGBTQ. They didn't care. You understand what I'm saying? They saw his blackness first.
Right.
And I know like many other people who are black and LGBTQ, we identify as people of color first.
Yes.
That's what you see first,
I
right?
identify as black first. I'm not really a fan of people of color.
There you go.
Because over time we have let even that phrase whitewash and further reduce blackness and where blackness falls in that spectrum of other races, because no other race has received the systemic racial policy creation to ensure not having access that black people have.
That's right.
Because when we talk about the Jewish community and we fast forward and we look at where the Jewish community financially is today, when we talk about the Asian Pacific Islander community, and that includes Korean, Vietnamese, North Asia, South Asia, which I have great relationships with people within the Asian Pacific Islander community. But when you look at where they are today, economically, financially, as far as access to businesses, when you go into black community and you see who owns the black stores, the corner stores, the beauty supply stores, there's still a movement for buy black.
Oh yeah.
So I personally am not a fan of the conversation of people of color. I clearly identify as black, as I'm clearly going to identify my sisters and brothers as Latinx, as Asian Pacific Islander, if that is what you choose. But I am clearly black because America owes black America an apology.
That's right.
And I want more than an apology. I want policy, not just an apology. I want policy that is created and that is supported, that actually is going to give us the opportunity to build black wealth that you stole from us. Not the fact that we just have to, we need black wealth. No, you literally burned us out of our communities.
Wow.
You literally burned our towns down. We're talking about looting. I, again, have some, right now, anger issues. So therefore, I posted on Facebook that I really can give a damn about all the looting. Let's talk about all the looting and all the burning that y'all have been doing since the 1600s, then the 1900s, damn in the 70s, damn 3 weeks ago. Let's talk about that. When we ready to talk about that, then you can talk to me about some looting because a couple of stores got burned down, and they're not even burned down by us. They burned down by your damn white people that's coming out there creating havoc. So unless we're gonna really talk about it, the way we build it is right here. The fact that you all, the fact that Charlotte Black Pride came together, the fact that Destiny chose to be the sponsor and the supporter to create this conversation, the fact that Jazz had to go there. I am over here trying to keep myself from crying from the pain that you've had to endure because you are not the only one. You are just the one that's able to sit here and tell us about it.
I guess,
That is painful.
and for me, I guess there's two things that stood up amongst this conversation we're having. And to go back to what was said earlier, George Floyd was a black man. Of course, we know that we identified it as black. But what would have happened if George Floyd was a gay black man? Would we still be out there protesting? Would we have thousands of millions of people in the streets out there if he was known he was a known gay black man with a knee in his neck? So when someone asked me that question and I didn't have an answer. Because I was like, you know what, I don't know. I really don't know, because it goes back to what we say is, into our black community, we have issues we have to work out ourselves.
That's right.
And also, to the Wana's point is, after all the protesting and looting, what happens?
Right.
Policy needs to be changed. Are we going to get that? We can loot and protest all day, but until the top makes some policy changes, it's our work in vain.
And we elect folk who can make those changes.
Correct.
Right.
And give them the support to make them, because
That's right.
we now, they have policy on the book for Breonna Taylor, but your murderers are still walking around. So you have not arrested all of the officers that broke into her home, shot her home up, murdered her, then arrested her man who attempted to protect his queen.
Which was the wrong person.
So you've now got Breonna Taylor's law, but her murderers are still walking around. Again, a sister said it brilliantly, and it is going to stick with me forever. If Black America wanted more, that white America should be thankful that Black America only wants equality
And not
versus
revenge.
revenge.
Oh my
Because
God.
if we really
That was
wanted
it.
revenge,
That was it. Right
and then
there.
if you look at Chris, when you go back
Right.
and you look at the video that was just done by Dave Chappelle, and he talks about Christopher Donner. So here you had this black man who served his country in the military, who came home, became a police officer, who saw a white female cop use excessive force, reported her. He gets fired. He spends years trying to clear his name to the point where he snaps and he kills 4 officers. You made him do that. Because it wasn't about his black life mattering. It wasn't about his blue life mattering. It was the fact that you, black man, because you still a nigga. Jay-Z said it. We sing about it. We like to laugh about it. Light nigga, dark nigga, faux nigga, smart nigga, don't matter. Whether you in that uniform or not, the way they look at us. Because how many black cops have we watched get beat, get pulled over when they not in uniform? And then they got to tell, you had a police captain that talked about his own experience. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, you're absolutely right. Which black lives matter, and to who? So I went out to one day of protest. I haven't been out this time because I've done that. I want policy change.
And what's crazy, especially in Charlotte, you know who's behind most of the protests? No. The leaders of the founders of Black Pride, of Black Lives Matter, are black lesbians. We've
Exactly.
always, Monique has joined us. I introduced you in proxy. But what are your preferred pronouns?
She heard hers.
So as a mother, and a mother of a black man, as someone who is an educator and a student of history, I know you know how much black gay folk have contributed to the civil rights movement, to all of our freedoms. We are standing on the shoulders of James Baldwin, who went to Europe and took our plight in the 1950s and 60s global. You know, the whole global community knew what was going on in our community because he was writing and lecturing all over the world. Bayard Rustin, who was the architect of the civil rights movement and all of Dr. King's marches, and who introduced Dr. King to the nonviolent theology. So, and you, what's your perspective on what's it going to take to kind of bridge the gap so that really all lives matter in the black community?
I think we have to start within our own communities. And for me, everything begins with love and education. And that's where it starts. And your point to Bayard Rustin is a great one, because just like black history is whitewashed and erased from general education, so is LGBT history.
That's right.
And there are so many people within our own communities who can readily quote Dr. King, having zero knowledge that that march where he gave that famed speech would have never happened had it not been for an out black gay man. And those types of conversations are the ones that we need to have in our very own families first, while recognizing that the people that we often want to ostracize are our family, our immediate family, not just extended family. They are our family. 1 in 4 of us is LGBT. So if you don't think you have a friend, not even a friend, an immediate family member, then you're either in denial or you have presented the type of behavior and demeanor that has frightened that person into a closet so badly that they are unable to be honest with you and walk in their authentic truth. So again, love and education, and we have to start with having these conversations, particularly during Pride. I have that issue with Pride, but we're all the brown faces. We were there. Many will say we threw the first brick, and this is, so until we incorporate this knowledge and we understand that we have made so many strides every day, all day, I think we're gonna sadly see more of this intolerance. And I think, again, we need to start within our own communities, our own families. Most of us are walking around with the world at our fingertips, meaning most of us have cell phones. We no longer have the excuse of, I didn't know and I didn't have access to the information. Because when you're looking for the new Jordans or the who's got the Groupon on your favorite restaurant, suddenly that zeal kicks in and you're able to find the information. Likewise, we need to find the information that speaks to us and our contributions and our pride and our atrocities. I think when we start there, that it'll go a long way into bridging certain gaps. And lastly, not to cause any trouble, but our faith-based organizations. Okay. That's part of it for me. I am a native New Yorker who has been living in Charlotte for 13 years now. I'm in HIV intervention and prevention, and I also teach in CMS public schools. I see the difference. I see the difference from crossing the Mason-Dixon line when it comes to the type of information that you are able to disseminate and how people receive it. Wow. And I know that we need our faith-based organizations online to walk the walk that many of them talk about, love thy neighbor. And I didn't hear that end with unless it's a gay or lesbian or trans or bi person. I thought it just meant everyone. So I'm gonna need to see a little more practice in that and a little less fear. I understand when people don't know, they're afraid, and that can cause them to act and behave in irrational ways. But at the time for that, I'm so past it. I'm so past it. I'm so past talking about prisons. I think that the entire system needs to be abolished. There is no how do we work through this. This is a system of policing that began with slavery. Correct. It's as simple as that. I don't know if it can be tweaked. I think you might have to scrap it and start all over again. Maybe we need to start talking more about restorative justice, and less about being punitive, less about continuing to market slavery through the 13th Amendment and prison privatization. These things are only going to occur again through love and education and constant communication. Constant communication. And I know I said lastly before, but one more lastly. Bridging that gap and what can we do? Like it or not, we live in a patriarchal capitalistic society. And more often than not, before it's about black or white, it's about green. And when you see things changing, often it's not because someone woke up, a law was enacted, and suddenly oh wow, I get it now, I love you, even though you're black. No, it's not that, I need your black dollars. Okay, so when we recognize the power in our pockets and how that impacts our communities and our worlds at large, a lot of the communities that Ms. Mayfield mentioned, they understood that, and there's a little bit of fear of what'll happen if they don't get those dollars. The bus boycott didn't work because they love black people and, oh, we're tired of seeing you walking. No, it was over a year of no money. And so that education, that communication, that recognizing your economic power, and having the fortitude. I'm not saying it's easy. A year walking? That was not easy. Okay, so it will take some fortitude, and I believe that we can do it, because I'm only sitting here because I come from people who survived something much worse than this. So I believe that we can do it, but we're gonna have to practice a little more patience with each other, little more love, understanding, little more I can hear you even if you don't completely echo what I say. Recognizing that we might be doing it a little differently, but the goal is the same, so we can still work together.
There you go.
When we start really conceptualizing that with greater intent, I think seeing a brighter future will be more than a dream.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. Eternity, how you feel?
Yeah.
So in terms of this whole bridging the gap with, all Black Lives Matter, I feel like at this point it's not a conversation that we need to have with cis people. It's conversations that cis people need to have with cis people. In the same way that we want white allies to start talking to their racist white counterparts, we need straight Black folks to call out their intolerant friends, family members, and talk to them. Because in the same way a racist white person is not going to listen to a Black person because all they see is a nigger, a intolerant cis Black person is not going to listen to us because all they see is a fag, a tranny, and a diaper. But if you hear something from your friend that y'all been, close for like 20 years, you get through because they'll receive that person. So I feel like a lot of times it's us. We're always talking to our people and say, "Hey, we're you. We're like." You see so many posts of straight Black folks talking about oh, well, y'all got your gay rights. I'm like, well, hold up, bro. You see this skin? Like, why do you think I'm separate from what we're doing here for us?
That's right.
And it's kind of like, oh, y'all need to get on the train for Black folks. Like, if you only knew, because you're ignorant,
That's right.
that you wouldn't have your rights if it wasn't for all these fags, trannies, and dykes. So if you don't sit the fuck down, sorry, but yeah, it has to come from people they regard on the same level, because no matter how much sense we make, you can't talk to a closed mind.
That's right.
And honestly, I'm tired of wasting my breath. I don't even engage with those people anymore.
Right.
I see them coming, block, goodbye. Now, like a year or two ago, I would argue until I'm blue in the face, but I'm like, because they're not receiving me. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take that energy away from you and give it to my people who need it. The ones that, the ones you're talking about, that they're not able to say something to you, I can go support them. Because, I fuss it because of anybody, I've grown so much. It's funny because you said, like, somebody said that she didn't think I talked. She's like, why you want to come? You want to talk? Oh yeah, I talk now. I talk a lot. I got a lot to say.
We had, Eternity and I had a really interesting exchange where I had to apologize. Because she had posted online, I don't remember what the incident was. Somebody was racially insensitive to you or something.
Yeah, I posted about the Younger for Black queer folk. And here come this white woman talking about something. I got a tan or I'm a little brown. Can I come? And
Yes.
there's one thing that's the one thing that when I hear from white people, it pisses me the fuck off. Like I kind of like everything else kind of rolls off, but when you get to that skin tone thing, like oh I can just get a tan.
Right.
And it was just so. And I'm sure she meant it as a joke, and it was in the LGBTQ group, so it wasn't even just some random white person. That made it even worse. So I actually was like,
And she was an LGBT. She was a queer person saying,
I presume, yeah.
"Can I come to your event since I have a tan?"
Yeah.
And she was specifically doing a yoga event
For
for
black
black
And I'm
LGBTQ.
with you on the people of color thing. When I say black, I mean black. Now, when I see
Yes.
people of color, I mean people of color,
Yes.
basically non-white. But at this point, I'll say black and people of color.
Yeah.
But yeah, she posted that, and I was actually good because I didn't cuss her out immediately.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my response was, well, why didn't you educate her? Like this was a moment of education. And she got me together. Like I'm tired of educating people. Like I have a right to be frustrated, and I have a right to be fed up. I have a right to have had enough. That was clearly insensitive and racially insensitive, and I got her together. And in the moment I didn't understand it, but you know what got me the most was, and this is where we got to understand each other and have, as you said, candid and open conversations. Where Eternity said to me, actually, you're saying I need to apologize to her hurts me more than what she said.
Right.
That was enough. I was like, okay, let me shut the fuck up. that is not my aim. You know what I'm saying? But I get that. So although I would have done something differently, maybe my capacity is in a different place than hers is right now. Or maybe that's where her capacity was that day and in that moment. But she has a right to be like, nah.
I'm gonna challenge that a little bit, because for some reason, black men have this innate desire to save white women. So we can trace this whether it's a cis black man or whether it's a gay black man. So think of the black male producer who was all over the media because he was getting ready to board the plane in first class, like because he bought his ticket, and a white woman dared to challenge him. He felt the need after just all I did was went ahead and record and show you for the world to see how you acting a fool. But he felt the need to then apologize because of all the hate and because she lost her job because of all the anger.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Negro. I'm gonna need you to back up and self-internalize why you felt the need to come in and try to save her.
Yes.
Okay, let's fast forward. The black gay
Mr.
author,
Cooper.
writer, out bird
He
watching.
was gay.
Yeah, out bird watching, white woman addresses him because you in the wrong, signs everywhere saying keep your dog on the leash. But you out, and then you go off, he records it, and then because she again gets fired, gets all this negative backlash, he as a black man felt like he needed to stand up and say, well, I didn't mean for all this to happen. I really need to understand what the hell is wrong with you black men when y'all feel a
I can
need.
tell you don't have that disease.
But there is.
There's a lot of